Okay, is everybody?
Yeah, that's why I thought even though you're taking exams, good trouble with principal. Sure. I've studied on it. Oh, sure.
Okay, everybody, welcome. On behalf of United America, I'm glad you guys braved the cold and rather dreary days and the lost daylight savings, but hopefully we can be a little bit of light and brightness to our current situation. So, how did you guys feel after the election? Good, bad?
Good.
Kind of interesting election, wasn't it? Seeing a lot of the excitement, big voter turnout. I think we had kind of record turnout across the country and in Wisconsin. I know some of you worked at the voting booths and saw more than usual, so I think that was good. Any comment about young people? Did you guys see more young people?
Yes.
That's good. We need the next generation to be engaged. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rich Eng, and my wife Nina and I lead the United America chapter here in Wisconsin. And we're excited to have you here today, and I want to spend about 15 minutes giving you a little bit overview of what United America is about, and we have a very exciting guest speaker that we'll introduce. But if you think about a game, how many of you guys played the game Monopoly as kids? Or how many? Maybe you guys still play it now, right? Yeah, what did you guys like playing about Monopoly? What were some of the fun things about it?
I have to give her all the railroads.
Okay. You had the pre-negotiated arrangements, huh? Good deals, yeah. What were some of your favorite properties? Anybody have a favorite one? Boardwalk. Okay. Oh, you go for the Kilpie. You better watch
Yes.
Boardwalk, Park Place.
You can play the banker.
Yeah, play the banker. I did a little under the table stuff until my brother caught me. So, but yeah, you can do a lot, right? But with the Monopoly, right? When you have all the properties, is it fun for anyone other than the one who has all the properties? Of course not, right? It becomes very very difficult. It's no fun. And when I think about a monopoly, I think of a company. Right? What was the most famous monopoly you guys have heard of? Standard Oil. Another one, AT&T. You guys ever heard of AT&T? So those of us who are old enough remember in the day when they were still not broken up yet, Ma Bell. It was really difficult, right? Because what are some of the inherent properties of a monopoly? Back in the 80s, before we broke up AT&T, would they have lowered the costs of your international phone bills? No. Would they have invented the iPhone to innovate? No. Would they have even gotten rid of the cord? How many old enough to remember the cord? I remember I carried it out of my room so my mom wouldn't hear me, right? So all that is just not really competitive. And so that's why I'm glad they were broken up. But when I look at our political system today, it kind of acts like a monopoly. In fact, we have a special word for it. It's called a duopoly, right? When there's only two major players involved that dominate the market. And so I work in business. My day job, I work as an executive at GE Healthcare. And so very interested in competition, but want to make sure that competition is fair, play by the rules, and good market so that it works for the good of everybody. When you have a monopoly or a duopoly, does it work for the good of everybody? No, it works for the good of itself. Because just like a monopoly, the only motivation or incentive for the duopoly is to perpetuate itself, perpetuate the status quo, not drive improvement, not cut costs, not drive innovation. And that's the situation we have today with our two-party system. Now, I want to be very clear that I have nothing against Republicans and Democrats. I come from a very conservative background, okay? And there are good people in the Democratic Party, good people in the Republican Party, good people in the middle. And what I'm sharing with you is that it's the system itself that is flawed. It's fundamentally flawed. There's no incentive for competition. Just like a duopoly, it won't drive to make things better. There's no inherent motivation to do that. It's just stuck in the status quo. And those of us, whatever party we're from or no party at all, we're kind of just products of what that system produces by design. So if we want to fix that system, we're going to have to do something innovative. Some of us maybe have gotten involved in the parties, which which is good. Maybe there's possibility for change from within, right? We need young people who can go in and do that. But there's also room for doing something from without. And that's kind of the unique nature of Unite America. So if you look at the sheet that I handed out, this kind of just in one page gives you an overview of what we're fighting for here in Unite America. If you look at the upper left-hand corner where it says vision, vision is what we want to see happen. And ultimately what we want to see is we as Americans bridge the partisan divide, help our government work together so that we can make life better for our generation and the generation to come. Right? Did you guys notice the volume of attack ads that was happening this year? I mean, how many of you guys were motivated by these attack ads, right? I get sick of them. Okay, I'm kind of wired that I like logic. I like to, just see what does the person stand for? Can I trust him or her and what they can do? But these days it just seems you really can't make your point. Maybe it's human psychology, I don't know. You can't make your point unless you say somebody else is bad or somebody else is evil or you make somebody else the enemy. And I'm kind of like, that's not true. Even though I think the media wants to paint us as very far apart, I think many of us can find common ground and find a way to meet in the middle. So if vision is bringing Americans together, helping our government work for the betterment of the people, then what we have to do is our mission. And what we're going to try to do in our mission is to build a grassroots network that can help independents win. I'm going to tell you why independents are important in this overall picture. It's not the only element of success here, but independents are a very, very important part of this. When you look at independents, does anybody have an idea of, if you look at the percentage of the population, roughly what percent of the population identify as Republicans? Any guesses?
20, 30.
Yeah, about 20, 30. Last number was like 26, 27%. There's a weekly poll from Gallup that looks at this. How many self-identify as Democrats? Similar range, right? Just slightly lower, but it's about the same, 25, 26%. The number of people who identify as independents is in the 40 to 43% range, depending on what week you're looking at it. And that trend has been growing steadily since probably the late 1990s, early 2000s. So more and more people are getting fed up with the system. We don't trust our elected officials. Even though our elected officials, many of them go into service with the best of intent. But yet their approval rating and their trust rating, anybody know what we approve our officials at? What percent approval rating they get? Like 11%. I was really low, right? I mean, my trash collection service gets a better approval rating than the politicians, right? So it's a tough job. But when you think about it, okay, what do we got to do to help the government get working again? And that comes down to kind of the objectives. Now, I'll go back in a minute. So in order to make this system work better, we're going to have to do a few things, and they kind of all have to work together. So the objectives on the lower right really fall into three categories. One is on electoral reform. We have to fix how we do elections in order to make things work better. One of the key things that we try to strive for is ranked choice voting, which is a different way of voting than we have now, where you can win by a plurality. I won't get into all of the details of ranked choice voting other than from a voter experience, you're simply choosing, this is my favorite candidate, this is my next favorite candidate, and so on. You just kind of say who I like first, who I like second, and so on. That's all you have to worry about. But with the beauty of ranked choice voting is you can win by a majority. Another thing is because it's not just the first choice vote that counts, it's the second choice vote that counts as well as every choice. That makes whoever's running motivated to not only want your first choice, but also want your second choice. And by wanting to be your second choice, it forces people to not be on the extremes, but to move towards the center. And when we move towards the center, we have less attack ads and more of a dialogue about, hey, what we're going to do. So that's just an inherent property of ranked choice voting. So there's other electoral reforms, gerrymandering. Have people heard what gerrymandering is for? We have a Supreme Court case that we're going to redo. It's about, just if the Democrats win, say 50% of the vote, but the Republicans get 60% of the seats, something's kind of wrong with how we've got our districts drawn. That's what gerrymandering does. It does these funky things with the lines, and we've got to fix that too. That's a talk for another time. So that's part of the electoral forms we're working on. The second thing that we're working on is the legislative changes. How many guys remember Dennis Hatzert, Speaker of the House, a long time ago, dating myself? Yeah, he was. He's not in a very good place right now. Again, that's another story, for those of you who follow politics. But he invented this rule. This rule wasn't a law, but it's kind of a rule, unspoken, called the Hatzert rule. Anybody know what that rule is? Yes?
Unless the majority of the majority approves it, it doesn't come to the floor.
Exactly. So even if the majority of the House wanted to discuss it, if the majority of the majority didn't want to discuss a bill, it would die. And to me, that's not a democracy, right? That's not the will of the people. It's simply a game that the duopoly has to keep control of the system. So they introduce only what's important to the party that wants to perpetuate its own existence. So we want to end the Hatzert rule, and Marty here is leader of No Labels for Wisconsin. They have a great pledge called Break the Gridlock, which basically changes the rules so that the Hatzert rule doesn't have any effect. It fosters bipartisanship. It fosters the ability to work together, and we don't get the gridlock that we have when the House is run by such rules. So that's one of the reforms that we drive. And then the last thing is these competitive reforms. And the one thing, and this is unique to Unite America, it's what we call the Fulcrum strategy. I don't know if you guys had that little business card, but you can look at it later. But essentially what the Fulcrum strategy is, imagine the U.S. Senate. You have 100 senators in the U.S. Senate. So usually it's going to be about 50-50. It's a little bit tilted towards the Republicans right now. But if you have 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans, it's fairly balanced. So there's always this strong sense to vie for a majority so you can gain control. Now imagine if instead of just Republicans and just Democrats, you had a few independents, just a handful, like say 5. If you had 5 independents and then 40-some Democrats and 40-some Republicans, does anybody have a majority? No. Can anybody then control the Senate and do all the games that come with control and total lack of accountability? No. So these 5 independents have now created a fulcrum, right? A fulcrum is kind of this thing that sits on a lever, gives you mechanical advantage, the tipping point of a teeter-totter, basically. That's what these 4 or 5 people could do, and this is the strategy of Unite America. Is let's elect 5 people into the U.S. Senate that can serve as a group that says, you know what, we are kind of in the middle. We don't need to have the majority, but unless you kind of work together and find something that we in the middle are okay with, which means you have to work with the people a little bit farther left or right than the center, you're not going to get anything done, and that's going to look bad to your constituents. However, we can get a lot done to America, because if you study a lot of policies outside of the wedge issues, we find that most Americans can agree on doing things together. Like one of my bets, even on a hotbed topic like gun safety, if we put ourselves in a room, I bet this room could come up with a reasonable gun policy, which is a very hotbed issue across the country, but we could come up with something that would be approved by maybe 70% of the broader American population, simply because many of us are sportsmen and sportswomen. We enjoy the outdoors, but we also say, look, it makes no sense to have crazy people get these things. We could do something like that. But anything that we propose would never pass because the left has to defend their side of, no guns whatsoever, blah, 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 and the right has to say, complete free-for-all, anybody can get this, and they can never meet without, really disappointing those people on the far sides. By having this group of 5, it forces them to say, you got to do something different, and then if they want to get something done, they'll embrace the middle, and that is the beauty of the Fulcrum strategy. So that is kind of what we're trying to achieve, and the last thing I'll point you to is the lower right here is the why. This is why I'm doing this. My story is I come from the conservative side, but I guess the compelling moment for me was after the 2016 election. I could not believe that our system had failed with someone that I just didn't see fit what we should have as a leader. And I really did not care about politics at all for 50 years of my life. So I'm guilty. I'm apathetic. I mean, I voted, but I didn't get involved and do anything. And after this, I said, you know, I gotta get off my butt, because I remember my dad taught me as a kid, look, if you complain about the problem, then you either shut up or be part of the solution. So I decided to get involved with this. I mean, this is just this year. I have read more books about politics than I ever have in my entire life in 1 year. I mean, I'm an engineer, so all I did was read engineering books and business books. The first time I finally learned to spell D and R correctly, and now I'm feeling a little bit better. And so I'm happy that you guys are all here to be part and check out what Unite America can be. So last point, and this is a great segue into our speaker, is when you go back to a monopoly, if you think of applying monopoly to sports, how many of you guys were proud of our Brewers this year, this season? Great season, right? So sports, somewhat like politics, you have multiple teams, and they play and the fans enjoy the game. But imagine if, instead of the teams that we have in the league, you just had the Yankees and the Red Sox. You know, great for their markets, strong rivalry over in the Northeast, but for us, you know, we probably don't care too much. It doesn't fit us. And yet, if that's the only choices we have, we kind of, there's something unsatisfying about, you know, rooting for the Yankees and rooting for the Red Sox. Now imagine even further, before the days of a salary cap, if you tried to have a team like the Yankees, who, let's say, had all this money in a metropolitan area that's 10 times the size of Milwaukee, could we compete against New York if there was no rules to kind of regulate what a team could do? Now, facetious question, right? So the aspect of money drives an uncompetitive situation. It makes things really difficult to compete in. I'm not saying money is bad. Money is just it's a tool. We all have to be careful about how money plays and how corruption can happen, right? You've heard the saying, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts what? Absolutely. So we just have to be aware of how that happens. That's why I'm pleased to introduce our friend George Penn. So if I've only been looking at this since April, George has been doing this for many years. And I'm going to let him tell the story, but he has looked at a groundbreaking ruling, Citizens United, which he'll explain in his talk, that basically gave carte blanche access to money, to politics, and did a few other things too with corporate personhood. But this is, you know, particularly an insidious ruling from the Supreme Court that had long-lasting ramifications in the very fabric of American political system and society. George has been fighting the good fight for many years. We can learn a lot of lessons from what he's done. He's given great advice to me and Lena, to Marty, the rest of the team, in terms of how we can do to get this movement rolling, to attract people. George is especially good at building grassroots. He'll talk about all he's done around Wisconsin. So please give me a warm welcome to George Penn. And if you guys can't hear George, we can mic him up. I don't have it on now. Just let us know if we need to turn it on, okay?
Lenny, could you get the lights up in front here? It's tricky back there. Nice, okay. Can everybody see that? Can everybody hear me? All right, good. All right, so thank you, Rich and Lena, for inviting me, because the work they're doing is important. I'm going to talk about our work, their work, and movement building, because we believe this is going to take more than just doing little things. It's going to take big things. And I got a couple of quotes in here that I think help me stay motivated. Never doubt that a small group of people committed citizens can change the world. It's the only thing that ever has. And we're in a position that if we can't find a big enough small group, we won't change the world, and it'll stay the way it is, which I don't think any of us probably likes. So now I'm going to use my little clicker here. All right. And the group I work with is a complementary partner to Unite America. It's called United to Amend. And the amend means we're trying to get a constitutional amendment. The simplest way to say it, though, even though it's much more complex, is to overturn Citizens United. It's much more complex than that. And you know, and that's what we get the people uniting to do that is what the name means. So I'm going to talk about this map and some other things too. But our premise is that big money in politics is the root cause of all the problems that we cannot solve in the system that we have, as Rich talked about it. And you might ask, what the root cause of what? Well, if you want better roads, we're not gonna get it until we have a better government. You want better schools, we're not gonna get it, because we got a root problem of money and politics that won't move us. I don't know if each of you has your own issue, you can think it in your head. We're not winning it. The people are not winning on those issues, and the root cause is because our politicians have been bought, basically, by that money. So I want to discuss several things today. I want to talk about why I'm here. Rich gave his story, I'll give you my story, and I think between the two stories, you're going to see yourself in why we're here. And I want to talk about what is WYUTA, that's Wisconsin United to Amend, doing. How do we do what we do, and why do we do what we do? And then I want to finish with how we are going to reclaim the republic, and the we is bold and underlined, because that doesn't mean United to Mend. That means we, Unite America, United to Mend, and a bunch of other groups that exist that I'll refer to. It means the movement. We will change this. Okay, good. Does that help, or do you have to do the volume up? All right, Rich. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 1, 2, 3. I'm a 13 base guy here. 4, 5, 6, 7. Can you hear me? Oh, now you did it, Rich. You got a fix right there. All right, that's a good job. Okay, good.
Are there slides on your website?
No, I created them for this. If you wanted a copy, you give me your card, and our website will blow you away, but we don't have this kind of stuff. But if you want it, I'll get it to you. Right? And we got others. This is customized to this discussion and to you. When I go and talk about what our group is doing to build our group, the slide has some of these slides, but it's different. So you let me know if you want it. All right? Why are we here? That's my grandson. That's why I'm here, right? When I'm working and I work hard and I work over 40 hours a week on this, right? In 2012, I shut down my business to do this the rest of my life. That's how committed I am. This is my mission because of this. His name is Nick. And I think you all have your own Nick and Nicole, grandchildren and children, that brings you into this room. And that you can hear my emotion in that, right? So if I'm working on this, working hard, and I get tired, and I just shut my eyes and see this picture to give me the push to keep going. Because this is going to be hard work. I repeat, this will be hard work. I want you to give us some energy into that work. And certainly the Angs and I are committed. So that's one driver for me. Anybody know who this person is? Clearly not a 1980s hairstyle. All right? Wow, how do you know that?
A good guess.
If I had a prize, you'd be getting it. All right? I didn't have to give my second hint was, she had a coin minted in her name, right? That would have been, some of you would have gotten that if this woman wasn't as smart as she is. All right? All right, so why is she here? All right, Susan B. Anthony. She started the women's voting suffrage movement in 1848. I travel all over Wisconsin, as you can see by the map here, right? And you're going to see here. She traveled all over America, which was pretty much Wisconsin at the time, in the east, right? Okay. But she did on horseback and train, right? But she never married, never had kids. She committed her life to it, right? But really what inspires me here, and every time I say it, I can feel the emotion again. Ladies, we stand here today planting the seed that we will not reap the harvest. What does that mean? Anybody can tell me shortly what that means?
The results, you'll be dead by the time the whole thing.
I won't be here, ladies, when our grandchildren get this. Anybody know when the 19th Amendment was passed? 1920, September 18th, 1920. She died in 1905. If I have 1/10 her energy, I'm going to be a contributor to this movement. God bless her. She's the other inspiration. I close my eyes and I see those two, and I'm back to work. Rich and Lena and I, we hope that you have enough energy to give something. Not what we give. That's exceptional. All right. That's we can do it. We have the opportunity. But these are why we are here. That's my first point. We are all here for our children, grandchildren. All of us, I see a couple of younger people without white hair in here, but I believe we grew up in the best economy and the best democracy in the history of mankind in this country. That's what exceptionalism meant in this country. I believe we don't have a democracy. I don't believe you might disagree with me, I don't believe we matter to their decisions at all. And that means you don't have democracy. And I believe we don't have the economy, and we're losing it. You know, stock market would tell you we got it, GDP, those are their metrics. The metric is, how is it impressing us? And we don't have an economy that works. That's why I'm motivated to try to change that for that slide right there, all right? So the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is good to do nothing. Edwin Burke, a great conservative philosopher, right? The only thing necessary for the triumph of a broken government system is the fact that we didn't do anything. Rich you know, it looks back and says, I wish I'd have done more. I've got the same story as Rich. Actually, I started about the same age as Rich, said 52. Rich, that's right, 2003, I was 52 when I took my head out of the sand. And so Rich and I and we're both engineers. We're kindred, we're brothers here in a lot of ways. So we have to now do what we have not done for 45 years. We have to get involved in the democracy in the ways that we can, little or a lot, either by time or money, whatever you can invest. This is an investment that we have to make for our grandchildren. That's why I will keep working. What we have is that our political system is owned by big money, bottom line. And is this what you want? I don't think so. Right? So we need to change that. And you know, I even got a little thing that I carry around on this one, the essence of when I found the sign. How can the politicians represent you when they're given millions to represent somebody else? They will, they are, and they're going to in the future keep doing that until we fix the system for them. We have a system of legal bribery, and our constitutional rights have been overridden by the Supreme Court, and not only Citizens United, but in other cases. And we need to change that back to this we the people issue. That's what drives this movement here. Our framers, right, we're sitting in, so what the year was the, I like to do quiz, you know, you get, what year was the Constitution written?
1789.
87, all right, 1787, thank you. August in Philadelphia, without air conditioning, is not fun, okay? These guys are sweating their asses off. This summer, I just took my grandson into Independence Hall and Liberty Bell. I went out east and I got him there. These guys spent that summer, they were working, they had many things they had to challenge. They had to put off, a lot of them says, I don't want an amendment without the abolition of slavery. They didn't get it, they had to negotiate, they had to come to the middle, right? That's the way democracy works, right? And they also said, we are afraid of what the corporations, if they get the power, they get the money, what they'll do to this country. This is 1787, right? They just came off of the East India Company and the king being the oligopoly that we have the equivalent of today, right? So they were worried about corporations themselves and what that would do, and the rich. And a lot of discussion. Lest you think I'm anti-corporation, I am not anti-corporation. Our corporations are needed today. They will be needed forever in the kind of economy that you need for 7 billion people. I have no problem with it, and nobody I know that works on this, a lot of people around the state work with me on this, and nobody I know says that they're against corporations. We're against corporations and the elite that own the corporations, writing the laws for their benefit as a crony capitalist system. That's what has to be fixed. We don't want to get rid of corporations. I want Rich to keep his job at GE. Okay. Yeah. Right? So I want to talk about 3 legal cases, real simply, and to get three points across here. The first case is the railroad company sued a county in California in 1886, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the railroad company. It's a tax issue. It's about how are you taxing us equivalent to the next county kind of thing. That's what it was about. The ruling was for the railroad that has nothing to do with this. What has to do with this is that the legal myth was inculcated into the psychology of the legal system. that a corporation is a person and has all the equivalent exact rights of a person under the Constitution. All right? The Supreme Court never brought up this topic. What happened was the court reporter who writes the head notes, which is, if you're in business, the executive summary, right? And in that he said the Supreme Court did not talk about corporate personhood because it's already been established in law that a corporation is a person. And then I've got a map that's 17 feet long of maps since then of corporates using their personhood to overwrite the rights of the people, right? So corporate personhood, corporation being a person is a threat to our democracy. It is a main cause of why we're here. Buckley versus Leo, 90 years later, all right, another case, I don't remember what it was about even, don't care about that. The point is, it established and inculcated the legal myth that money is equivalent to speech, right? And so, Buckley versus Leo said, the government has to be very cautious on how it will try to limit the campaign money and stuff. They didn't say you can't limit it, right? They said you need to be judicious on how you limit it if you're going to limit campaign stuff. So it kind of like started putting some brakes on the ability to limit the money coming into campaigns. If you heard of one of these three cases only, it's the last one, Citizens United. Right? Citizens United basically took those two and wove them together and said, it's clear that a corporation is a person that has all the rights of persons under the Constitution. And the First Amendment of the Constitution says that any person has the right to speech no matter what. The government cannot limit that. And therefore, a corporation being a person has the right to speech, and you no longer are allowed to limit money at all. If you heard of McCain-Feingold, it died that day. Right? So they just basically said, all locks are off. Super PACs were born. Now, let's put that in terms of what do we mean by that? They open the floodgates for the money to come in. If you look at this here, you see that it goes up and down, the presidential midterm, up and down. And ironically, McCain-Feingold was written here. It was passed here, right? Which was supposed to do some limiting. Well, what I'm speculating is that they found out how how to define the loopholes around that. Right? It was now clear, and the law was in there what you can't do. And they said, well, it didn't stop this, so I'm doing this. That's speculation, all right? The important part here is that Citizens United, January 10, 2010, was just after the 2008 election. And it goes up, and it comes down. It goes down, up presidential, midterm should be here. Right, by that pattern of less in the midterm. More was spent in the 2010 midterm than in the president for the first time. All right. I said, okay, that's cool, until I saw the next slide, 2012. So the next slide, right, is going to be exactly this slide. I'm going to put one more blue bar to the right for the year 2012. Right? The money in the presidential elections tripled in one cycle, right? And it's going to, it's going to keep going up. This year I'm hearing it's not going up quite this fast now, but it's going up, all right? And it's going to stay up or keep up. That's what Citizens United did. It opened the floodgates of something that is a problem, and this is why since 2012 we cannot get away from the ads. Next year they're going to start with the presidential ads. Right? A year in advance, we're going to start seeing that coming up. So that's what Citizens United did functionally in terms of all this money coming in. That if I'm a legislator and I take that money to get in, and I don't write the laws they want, are they going to give me that money again in 4 to 6 years, 2 to 6 years? They're not going to give it to me. I'm going to write the laws they want. They can sit there and they do say it, but we don't act on that. Yeah, I know how humans act. You're a human, right? So the point is, it does matter, the money in politics, for owning it. So some people want to blame another party. This is not a partisan issue. I got a lot of this, this is a slide I had to, oh, good, you can't even see all this garbage. Point is, both Obama and Romney campaigns spent near $1 billion each on their campaigns. That's just the presidential campaigns. But it's both parties. And if you go, and this is one of the reasons I became a centrist independent when I first took my head out of the sand, I saw a table that looked at the biggest donations and the two parties, though the numbers were different by the corporations that were on there, right? Every corporate, the biggest corporations, at the bottom the number was the same, even though the corporations give to both campaigns because they don't care who wins. They want to make sure they have influence when they get in. That's why it's bipartisan. So let's not blame the other party. That's my point here. Let's blame the system that needs to be changed in the ways, many more ways than we're talking about tonight. This is the one that really grabbed me when I first saw it, and it's ugly, and I don't have time to make a pretty one, but this is a pie chart. If you know what a pie chart, there's a little sliver there. This is 99.75% of the checks written. We don't really write much checks nowadays, right? We'll go in and do on the internet, but the checks written, if the cash ends, but 99.75 of them were less than $200. I think that's most of us if we contribute, all right? 1/4 of 1% were over $200, $201 to millions, right? Yet that 1/4 of 1% was 2/3 of the dollars. So this is the dollars put in. 1/3 of 1/4 of 1% is 2/3 of the financial dollars, right? If it's $1 billion that we're talking about, $667 million came from these few people. Who are you going to represent once you're getting the money from so few people? Now, what do the people think? There's so many polls. You could spend all day finding the polls between 2012 and now. Where's the people? And ultimately, between 80, on all these polls, if you look at them all, between 80 and 95%, depending on the poll and the question, saying money in politics is a problem and we need to fix it. That's liberals and conservatives when it's that high, right? Right? In this particular poll, 87% said there's too much money influencing campaigns and we need to fix it. And the same poll asks another question is, how much fixing do we need to do, right? Do we need to fix little things? Do we need to fix big things? Now, I'm a little confused when I read this. You know, only 13% says minor changes. That's like making a law here, making a law there. 87% fundamental and completely rebuild. I don't know the difference between them. What it tells me is it's got to be a lot more than just some laws. Otherwise, we're not going to change anything. And so, so more recent, to give you something more recent, that was an older one. This one just came out. I put it in here because it's so pretty. Okay, but this Chapman University top 10 fears it does these polls. This is the first time in their polling that corruption, political corruption, came in as #1 fear of Americans. They don't fear the corruption; they fear where we're going because of it, right? I mean, if we interpret this, and that's 20 percentage points to the next one, which usually healthcare is right. But this in 2017, this one when I got this computer genius named Jim that finds this stuff, and it's so cool. Similarly, oops, I gotta go over this so we can, oh, what did I do here? All right, there we go. That's, so that, oh no, it's doing something to me here. Oh, there we go. All right, you ever heard of Kaiser Health? They do all the polling on healthcare, everything you want to know about healthcare, right? And they do polls every year. So this year, 2018 summer, just recently, right? First time in their polling, beating out healthcare, corruption in DC, #1, most important thing the candidates should talk about. How much did you hear up till yesterday on corruption? Right? They're not going to talk about it until we make them, right? They're going to talk about healthcare. And they're going to polarize the position so that we are confused and unsure. So, so the point is, the people understand there's a problem and it needs to be fixed. We need to engage the people to be saying, I want it fixed. That's what the movement is about, right? Rich gave you 1 point down here. I'm giving you a 73 to 2005. This is our confidence in Congress. And it's below 10% still right now. It's running in right here. This is, in the last 2 years or 3 years. Right? This has been going on. We've been getting to this point for a long time that we've been losing confidence because things have been getting worse and worse. Right? That's why you lose confidence. So things are getting worse and worse. Right? We can't go much lower. That means we're in trouble. We're starting to get to the point where we have no confidence. All right. So Who do the politicians represent? I'm telling you, they don't represent us. I believe they don't represent us. And so, who do they represent? So, a study by Princeton and Northwestern, I think last year or 2016, I'm not sure, if you forgot that. They looked at 1,800 laws that were passed between 1980 and 2001. And they asked the question that, who wanted these laws passed? Okay, these laws were passed. Did the citizens want these laws passed? Or did the elites and the corporations want these laws passed? Right? So what happens is that they ask the citizens about, they come up and they look at the citizens and they say, if 10% of the citizens want a law passed, there's 30% chance it'll pass. If 95% of citizens want a law passed, there's 32% law passed. Now, if you're an engineer like Jim and I, there's probably another one of you in here, we call this a correlation coefficient, meaning there's no relationship between what the people want and what they get. Right? You don't need to do the statistical math that Rich and I have done in our jobs for the years to know that the graph says it. So if you're elite, anybody in here is an elite? Or a corporation? Corporation is a person, so I can't tell. Okay? The elites, it's different. All these laws pass. If 10% of the elites wanted it, 8% chance it would get passed. If 95% of the elites wanted it, 62% chance. This is called strong correlation. Strong relationship. Only way we get what we want, because we're getting it 30% of the time, right? Only way we get what we want is if they want it too. Or at least they're not against it, right? Otherwise, we don't get it. That's what that says. What it means is, I put forward the proposition that we the people are not represented. And we have to change that. They will not change it. And we're looking for people to help us change that, right? So we have a democracy in crisis. And we need to reclaim our republic from that system that's broken. And we believe nothing short of an amendment is going to work. Now, I'm not saying that an amendment only will do it. Not true, or we wouldn't be partners. Amendment is a prerequisite as part of all the things we do. And there are many other things we have to do too, like what United America is doing. So it's a requirement, but it's not sufficient to change it. All right? But I believe, and others in this movement might not be so strong. I believe unless we get this amendment, all this other work is not going to have legs. It's not going to be durable, even if we pass it. All right. So how do we do? So how we got here? How do we fix this? Right. We fix this by building a movement. So it's not about the amendment. The amendment is a process and an outcome that we need. But we need to change the whole system. We need a movement to do that, and we don't do that just by looking at the lawmakers. We need the people to be involved in the movement, right? Susan B. Anthony movement culminated. We've all seen the movies about the women going to jail, losing their kids and families because they, in the early 1900s, just before it passed, right? That's what a movement is. We've all seen the movies of the black people being shoved against the wall with the water hoses because the system was going to fight it. That's what a movement is. I don't know that, I hope we don't have to get to those levels, but we need to have the people saying, I want it. And if it means getting on the streets, which might be needed, we're going to have to do more than just pass laws. That's the whole point. We've got to do more than just pass laws. That's going to take a lot. So what is United to Amend's MO? How are we doing, adding to this movement? And then I'll talk about how Unite to Amend adds to this, Unite America adds to this movement. We are building the movement, getting people aware by going into communities and putting on the ballot a referendum for that community to pass a resolution that says, State of Wisconsin, we want you to call for a constitutional amendment. Right? So we get an amendment by either the Congress doing it by themselves, or if they won't, and they won't, the states coming in and say, we want it, and you will. That's what we're talking about. That's to put it into Article 5 of the Constitution. The framers were smart. They said there could come a day when the federal government is so corrupt, we need to be able to make changes without them. If we do it, if they don't get involved when we get enough force, we need 34 states to call for it to make it official. If we get to 34 and 5 and they've done nothing, then the states do it themselves, right? And if the states do it themselves, the Congress and the president are not involved. So the framers have cut out the federal government from the process if they won't cooperate, thinking what has happened might happen. That's prescience. All right, so we're trying to build power as well as make a statement to our state legislature that we want to pass this amendment. This is not a Wisconsin movement. This is a national movement, or it is not a movement, right? And we have passed 133, as I showed there, 780 around the country of these same resolutions, similar resolutions. Each state's doing it their own way, right? Right. So, and actually, as of yesterday, we had 9 more passed. So this is 142 and 790 today. All right. So, so this is nationally going on. And I'm working with other states, and we're building this movement in that way, and working with a lot of organizations. And Wisconsin has passed. Let's stay with the old numbers because the percent's not going to change. If you do the math here, 16% of all the resolutions around the country were passed in Wisconsin, right? And we have about 2% of the population, right? We are leading it, and the country knows it. And I'm working with other states that want to get me on the phone and in their meetings to start up. So I want us to keep that leadership as we did with Bob La Follette 100 years ago, right? We need to keep that. We can keep that leadership. But we need your help to do that. In whatever piece of this movement, and there are many pieces, we are only one piece. I'm trying to draw a connection of movements, and that's why I'm here today, right? So what else are we doing, right, in this movement? So we're working with faith communities. I'm on a national interfaith caucus, trying to get the faith communities to come in. The faith communities have always been an important part of movements, whether it be suffrage, whether it be civil rights, or unfortunately, whether it be prohibition. Prohibition was driven by the wives whose husbands were spending the money during the Depression, and they got it done by going to the faith community. All right, we can do this wrong too, but that doesn't mean we stop it. And we had to have a second amendment to correct the mistake on that one. Point is, the faith community is important, all right? And then we're also going to be working with trying to get businesses involved. The recent poll I saw for smaller businesses, not the giant corporations, but 66% of small businesses understand that corporate personhood and the power it gives them doesn't work for them, it works against them because it builds crony capitalism. What is crony capitalism? When the government and the corporations work together, we have crony capitalism. I'm a capitalist, I'm not a socialist. We don't have capitalism. We have crony capitalism, and they're very different. And Adam Smith, the father of economics, talks about that with the mercantile system that they had then, which was crony capitalism. So we need to get businesses that understand that they are hindered. Their innovation, right? Rich talked about innovation and change. The big corporations write the law, so it's harder for them to compete and get their innovation. So we need the businesses, right? And we're building coalitions with a lot of groups. I'm here today because we are partners, Unite America and us, and we have different things to do, and we're going to work together as we can and will with organizations like that. So, and we're supporting, as I said, I get on the phone, and I've been on Skype calls with other states trying to get going on this movement, right? 19 states have called for this amendment so far. We haven't done it. So 19 states have made the call. And what they've called for is an amendment to get big money out of politics. It's got to be that vague when you got all the states involved, right? So, and that's when you get to the 34, then we all get together, or the Congress gets together, which they always have, and then they start writing the laws that the states say we want, and then all the negotiating of the actual language happens. So we're not just starting this. We're more than halfway in a number of states. Of course, if you're a mathematician or engineer, you know about the law of diminishing returns. It gets harder. Right? The more you get, it's going to be further between each one. It's harder. The easy ones come first, right? So we're working to be some number between 19 and 34 to do that, and so to get a constitutional amendment passed. So what do we want in an amendment? I talked about amendment. What is it you're looking for, George? Right? I'm looking to, as you can see in the red, right, clarify in the Constitution, not change the Constitution. Clarify in the Constitution the changes I'm going to talk about, right? You're going to change the Constitution. No, we're clarifying what it says already. The word corporation is not in the Constitution. I'll give you $100. I got a Constitution right here on my thing. You want to go through it and you find a corporation. You give me $10. If you don't find it, I'll give you $100 if you find it. Anybody that want to take that? You know I've studied the Constitution, right? okay? Point is, so we had to clarify these things, and what do we want to clarify? So this is shaded out. You can't see, this is the preamble of the actual referendums that we put on the ballot. This is the language we say to the community we want on the ballot. And the preamble says, because we got these old problems with money being controlling our government, you can't read, we need this. Only human beings are endowed with constitutional rights, not corporations, unions, right, or anything that's artificial. And money is not speech, and therefore, limiting political contributions and spending is not the same as, right? What were those two cases, myths at the front? I brought those up as the myths that we need to clarify. This is the language. This language is in. We have bills in both houses of our state that will not be taken up. And we've had them for the last 3 cycles since 2013. We offer it every cycle. They are ignoring it. And we have a bill in the House, federal House. We haven't gotten anybody in the Senate to get us a bill in. We're pushing on Tammy. Johnson says no, but we're pushing on Tammy. We'd like to get it in the Senate, but we don't have one in the Senate. But we have these 3 bills already out there 3 times in the last 6 years that they will not bring into committee. Right? But that's what we're asking them to do. So this wording is consistent all the way up the chain to those bills. It has to be, right? We got to ask the people, do you want this? Yes, we want that. Okay, see, the people want that. All right? So at the beginning, I said, we're going to discuss. No, you can't read it. Okay, so the lighting is right. So I got the why up there that I went through. I got the what we went through, and then the how I'm repeating. All right? How are we going to do this? We're going to reclaim this a republic, and the we means the movement. Not just United to Men, because that's what I talked about here, but that means United America, and that means you. In any way you decide you can do it.